Hey, what's going on guys? Welcome to my Affinity Designer crash course. In this tutorial, I want to take you from being an absolute beginner knowing nothing at all about Affinity Designer to being confident enough to creating your very first project. Although I'm not going to be able to cover every single feature inside of this program, as it will probably take me around 3 to 4 hours to teach you everything, I'm just going to narrow it down to what I feel is the most important things to know and everything that you're going to need to use in every project that you start. The current version I'm using today is 1.10 and is the most recent as of the 16th of September 2021. So if you're ready to get started, we just hit this new document button right there. So after selecting that new document, you will then be presented with this presets menu in front of us. And if we go over to the left hand side, you can see we've got this presets button and we've got the templates underneath it. If you select the templates, you can see a few templates in here that Affinity have included inside of the program. These are something I don't use myself, but you guys can feel free to do so. So we're just going to go back over to the presets menu again, where we'll talk a little bit about what we've got in here. So first of all, we've got my presets on the top menu bar there. And these are going to be the canvas sizes that you create and you save. Next to that, we've got some print presets, which takes us from different sizes from A0 all the way up to A10, etc. And these are going to be used for when you decide to print one of your designs. And to the right of that, we've got press ready. And this is generally the same thing as print, so I wouldn't worry about which either one of those you use. So next to that, we've got photo presets. And we've got various sizes in here, such as 10 by 8 or 12 by 10. And these are going to be really good if you have some photo frames around your home that you want to make specific sizes for. And next to that, we have web. And this is the one you're probably going to be in the most, but we'll come back to this in just a moment. So next to that, we've got devices, and this is used if you want to maybe create mock-ups for any one of these devices, such as an Apple Watch or an iPad or a Kindle Fire. And last next to devices, we have architectural, and this is going to be for those of you who are creating blueprints or those kind of documents. So we're just going to go back over to the web and we'll talk about some of these presets. So I imagine that most of you are already going to know what kind of project you want to do before you even begin. So it's just a case of finding a size canvas that you want to work with. So over here, for instance, we've got the full HD. This here will be a perfect size if you're creating thumbnails for YouTube, or if you are designing a CD cover art, for instance, or any social media post to upload to Facebook or Instagram, etc. So most of the time you'll find you'll already have a preset here for the kind of work that you want to do. If you don't, we can just manually do that ourselves over here on the right hand side in the layout. And we're going to talk about all of this right now. So at the top of the layout, we've got the page width and the page height. And these numbers are dependent on the size canvas that you want. You can change these simply just by double tapping on that or just dragging across. And underneath that, we've got the DPI. So it's set by default at 72, which is absolutely fine if you are creating web graphics or anything for screen. However, if you decide that you want to print any of your drawings or designs, you need to ensure that your DPI is on 300, as that is the industry standard for your DPI to get the best quality out of your prints. So all you got to remember is if you are designing for screen, then just keep your DPI at 72 or anywhere you like. That really isn't important. But the most important part is if you are printing anything, just keep that at 300. Okay, so moving on, underneath that, we've got our document units, and in here we can change from pixels to points to inches and meters, etc. That is dependent on how you like to design. I mostly keep it in pixels myself. Then underneath that, we've got the orientation, which is landscape or portrait. So you just choose which one of these that you want for your project. Underneath that, we have create artboard, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. Then we have the actual size zoom, and this you can leave as default. You don't really need to worry about any of that. There's no need for it. Then we have image placement policy, which this is kind of important. So to explain this in a nutshell is if you have this on preferred link, which most of you have probably already got by default, what this generally means is if you brought in an image from somewhere on your computer or your hard drive, then Affinity will link that image to its original location of wherever you saved that image. If later on down the line you have deleted that off your hard drive and you forgot that you even needed it, once you come to open Affinity Designer, it's going to tell you it has a problem finding that image. So if you never intend to delete any images that you reference inside of Affinity Designer, you can leave that on preferred linked. However, if you're not sure if you may delete some by accident later on down the line, it's always best to leave this as preferred embedded, which then that will actually take a copy of the original photo and it will store it inside of the Affinity document. So even if you come to delete the original later on, you will still have a copy inside of your project. So that's something that you should always keep in mind. So next we have the color section, and inside of here we've got color format and color profile. So this is another important step to remember when you decide what it is you're creating. If you are creating content for web or device, you need to ensure that you are on RGB. However, if you decide that your design is for print, then we need to change this down to CMYK. This becomes important because both RGB and CMYK both have different color ranges. And the best way to explain that is if I was to design a graphic which was made for web or device and I decided to print that, once I print that, it may not necessarily reflect the image on the screen, such as some of the colors may look different to what I originally chose. So say for instance, if I use the color blue, once I come to print that, it may look like a completely different blue to what it should be. Whereas if you use CMYK when you use in print, then whatever color you use on your screen should be the exact same color that comes out of your printer. So I hope that made sense. I know it's not the easiest thing to explain or understand, but just always keep in mind that you need CMYK for print and you need RGB for web graphics. Okay, so next we've got the color profile, and this is generally used for outsourcing and not really something that you may need to worry about yourself. But basically, if you decide that you've made a really good design or drawing that you want to have professionally printed, most professional printers use one of these inside of here, which is just a template. So all you do is beforehand is check on their website or maybe contact them and ask them which one of these that they use. And if you select the same one, then your design will reflect their printing and it should come out exactly how you designed it. But that really is an outsourcing thing and not something you may necessarily need to worry about. So it is perfectly fine just to leave it on the default if you're going to print at home and not worry too much about that. So underneath that, we've got the transparent background. So you can turn that on and off. If you're deciding to make web graphics such as social icons or company logos where you want a transparent background, then you can just check that on. If you just want a white background so you can design on it, you turn that off. This really isn't important as you can get that same achievement either way, whether you have this on or off once you come to export your document. So we don't need to worry too much about that. And next we have the margins. So this is dependent on the size that you require. If you want a margin or not, just simply turn that on and just type in your margin size. We're not going to need that through this project, so I'm going to turn that off. So underneath that, we've got the bleed. This isn't important if you are creating content for web or device. We can ignore that. However, if you decide that you want to print something, this can be really important, especially if you're printing full spread pages. And I'll explain that a little bit better once we create the document. But for now, we're just going to assume we're printing just so I can demonstrate this. And we need to change all of this to 3mm, as 3mm is generally the industry standard for printing with a bleed. So if we just type in 3mm, and hopefully that'll copy across the rest of them, which turns out to be 8.5 pixels. But that will show up as millimeters if we obviously change our document units up here. So before I create this document, I just want to come up here to the top where we've got this custom box, and we'll talk about what this is for. So next to this custom text, we've got this little round circle with this cross in the middle. And what this allows us to do is save our own preset. So anything that you type in here that isn't any one of these there is going to become custom. So everything we change here, if we decide we want to keep that for later on down the line to create a new document with that same settings, we will just check that button right there. And it'll create a preset just over here. So we can right click on there to rename this. And we'll just name that new just for the sake of doing that quickly to show you. And you can use that every single time you open up Affinity Designer just by coming over onto your My Presets. And if you decide you don't want any of these, just right click that again and delete it. And that is how you would use My Presets and save your own. So now we'll move on and we'll create the document we originally had. So remember, we've got this bleed on here at the moment. This is not something we're going to need, but I want to explain why it's important when printing full spread pages. So we're just going to go ahead and create this now. So here we are inside of the main interface. And before we get started on the course, I just want to address the bleed we was talking about, which is this purple bounding box outside of our canvas. And the way to look at this is kind of our safety net when we come to print. So just to quickly demonstrate, I'm just going to draw just out a simple rectangle. I'm going to give that a color. So just imagine this is our magazine cover, for instance, and it's going to be a full spread that goes from edge to edge. What will happen if we don't address the bleed at the top is once you send it to the printers and they come to cut it out, if their blade suddenly misaligns on this line up here and goes somewhere up here or in between that, it's going to leave a white border around the outside of your page, which could completely ruin your design and something you obviously don't want. So to avoid that happening, you always just need to adjust for the bleed. So we just drag that up to snap to the bleed there and do that obviously on all sides. So then if the blade does misalign at any point here, we're still going to get that same image in that we had, and we ain't got to worry about having a white border around the edge of this. And all you really need to remember once you've done that is keep everything important that you want to be on the page inside of the bleed. Don't ever take any text over the bleed. It's just really there for anything that's going to be full spread so you don't end up with your border around the edge. So I hope you kind of understood what I meant by that. Like I said, it's not important if you are doing web graphics, but if you do wish to print something like magazine covers or anything full spread and you don't want the white border around the edge, just make sure you always account for that bleed. So we're just going to delete that now and get started on the course. Okay, so we'll first begin by talking about the interface and some of the tools and features and functions inside of Affinity Designer. So if we focus our attention in the top left hand corner, you can see we've got these 3 different icons here, and these are known as your personas. And by default, the one over here on the right is called the designer persona, and this will open up every single time you create a new document. And this is used for all your vector-based art and what you're going to use 95% of the time. Then to the right of that, we have our pixel persona. And this is really good for creating sketches that you want to draw around in vector, or maybe applying certain effects with shadows and highlights and textures, which may already look familiar to any of you guys who have used Procreate on an iPad or maybe Photoshop. And finally up here on the further right, we have the export persona. And this is used for exporting multiple elements at the same time. So if you was creating a mock-up for a website and it had 60, 70 different shapes or pieces inside of the document, you then have the option to export all of those individually and then put them together inside of a web design program. But you'll find you won't use this most of the time, but the option is there if you want to. So once again, moving over to the right, we have another selection of tools across this top menu bar. I'm not going to talk about all of these, just the ones that I feel is important for you to learn in this course, starting with this section here. With this section here, it will light up once we've got some elements on the screen, and this will allow you to move things to the back or to the front or behind one object, etc. And this section right here is just the name of your document, which we haven't named this yet, but we'll save that later on down the line. And then once we come over to the right, once again, we have another section here. And these are all your flipping tools, whether you want to move it horizontally or vertical, etc., and rotate it. That is what that section is used for. Then continue to the right, once again, we have this section right here, which is our alignment. We can't see this lit up at the moment because we've got nothing on the screen, but this will give you the options to center things in the middle of the page and various functions like that. If we move over again to the right, we have this section here. This is one of those tools you don't really need to pay that much attention to, but the one here called snapping is an important one. It's always good to have that turned on, and I'll explain that more as we go along with the project. Then over here, we have our kind of shape building tools, and these are really good when combining or subtracting shapes from each other. And we'll also talk about that in just a moment. And we'll just ignore this for now. We don't need to worry about that for the moment. Like I stated, I can't tell you every single feature and function inside of the program, as it is just a crash course and something to get you started. And I can't expect you guys to sit there for a 4-hour video to learn the entire ins and outs of this program. So like I said, I will just cover what I feel is important and everything that you need to know. So next, underneath our personas, we've got this document setup and preferences. And this just allows you to go back to where we started and just change any of these things that you may have got wrong, such as your DPI or your dimensions and your color margin and bleed, etc. And then we have the preferences next to that, which is usually fine just to leave that as default and not really mess around with that. And what you will notice as we start to go through these different tools up here, this will start to change to all different functions on every single tool. So if we select that one there, we've got a different section there, and so on. With the node tool, we've got different options up here. and we'll talk about all these different things as we go on. But for now, we're going to start at the top and make our way down. So the first tool here on the left hand side is called the Move tool. And this is used just to either select objects or move them around the page. So if I just grab myself a circle quickly, I'll go back onto the Move tool. You can see I can just move that around freely and I can resize that. And that is exactly what the Move tool is for. So I'm just going to delete that for the moment. Underneath the Move tool, we have the Create Artboard section. And what this is made for is to create a second canvas or a third or fourth, however many of these you like. And you just simply drag that out. And there is our artboard we just created. And then we could draw another one next to that. And you can have as many of these as you like. And the reason you may want these artboards is if you are drawing logos perhaps, and you want to make two different colors of it, maybe a black and white one, and maybe a colored one, or maybe one that's black and one that's white. Or maybe you got into UI design and you want to make a dark mode as well as a light mode in your mobile app designs. But for now, I'm just going to go back on this because I no longer need it. I'm just going to recenter that. Then our next tool underneath is called the Node tool. And this is used alongside the Pen tool. And I'll explain that more as I go along, so we won't cover that right now. Then underneath the Node tool, we've got the Contour tool. This tool, in simple terms, is almost like putting a stroke on an item. So if we grab ourselves a circle and just drag that out and we click back on that Contour tool, we've got these different menus up here for different kind of effects. But generally, it just makes it bigger or smaller. This is a kind of thing you get with just using a stroke, and it's one of them features that isn't really needed. You can get some cool effects with it if you're doing the right kind of work. But I generally can't see this being one of those tools you use a lot, as I don't use it at all. So underneath that one, we have the Corner tool, and this will just put a corner on any object that we have, such as if we grab ourselves a square and we want these corners to be rounded, we're going to go ahead and grab our Corner tool, and we just select any one of these little boxes on the corners and we just pull it in just to make it a bigger corner, or we can push it out and make it smaller. And you can make this on any corner that you like. And you can see you can get some pretty unique shapes and effects here when it comes to designing. So that's a pretty good tool that you will use pretty often. And we'll just delete that one as well for now so we can move on. So underneath the Corner tool, we have the Pen tool. This is used for creating lines and curves, and you use it for tracing around objects and drawings and things like that. And I'll explain more about how to use this as we move on with a project. And like I stated earlier, this is used in conjunction with the Node tool. We use them two together, which I will cover later on. So I'll go ahead and delete that as well. Underneath that, we've got the Pencil tool. And essentially, it's kind of like the Pen tool, but this one is freehand and it gives you the option just to draw all over the place and do whatever you like with that. And then once you let go, it will turn that into a nice, neat line for you. And once you drew out the kind of line or design that you want, we can come down to the stroke menu down here and we can make that line bigger, or we can make that line smaller. And just as a quick introduction to the Node tool, if we grab that quickly, because it's also used with the Pencil tool, if you see all these little round circles we've got along here, we can select any of these and we can move them and we can adjust it and just make it a whole entire different shape. If you don't like it, we can delete it. And you just select all this with the Node tool. You can add additional nodes in here by tapping anywhere along the lines, as you can see, so we can just keep on manipulating this shape. And that is what the Node tool is generally for, is to give you the option to add or remove nodes and shape that in a different way to what it originally was. But we'll cover that more later on. So once again, we'll delete that for now. Then underneath that one, we have the Vector Brush tool. And essentially, it's just a paintbrush that uses a vector shape. So if we select that now, and we come up over here on the right hand side and we select the brushes, we have different types of brushes inside of here that will give us different effects. So if we just select one of these, we'll go for dry media or something that's going to give us a little bit of texture like that one there. And if we just draw that out, you can generally see what that does. It just kind of copies that style that we got here. And this is something you might use. I don't really use this often. I find that I generally use a paintbrush tool inside of the Pixel persona because it gives you more effects than this and offers some really good texturing details, but we'll talk more about that later on. So once again, I'm just going to delete that. Then our next tool is the Fill tool, and this is used to add gradients to items or objects. So if we just grab ourselves a shape quickly and we want to put a gradient across this, we'll grab ourselves that fill tool and we just drag from one side to the other anywhere you like. And you can see we've got two different colors here with a darker orange on the end. We can change these colors either by coming up to your color section on the right hand side inside of this wheel, or alternatively, we've got another option up here on the top menu bar where we can tap on there and we can change the colors in there also just by clicking in there. If we do it inside of this menu, we've got some additional options where we can change the type of the gradient, or we've got the opacity for certain ends of this where you can go into 0 opacity, as well as having the option to reverse it. And we can add additional colors on here by just double tapping anywhere along here and add as many as you like, then just simply coming in and changing the colors. And we'll use a gradient tool throughout the project as well, so I'm going to delete that one. And then underneath that, we have this transparency tool, which essentially is the same thing as the fill tool. So I'm just going to drag the shape out again. And you see we've got the same gradient that we just created, because by default, Affinity will save the last one that you did. So if this was a color green, for instance, and I drew it out again, it will be green. So because I used that gradient before, it copied that over to that same one. So I'm just going to undo that and get rid of it. But back to the transparency tool, what this generally does is it takes it from being one color on one side and it fades it out into nothing on the other. So if we start here, and you can see we come all the way over here, it'll start to eventually just blend in with the background. So if we come off that, it goes from being light into going darker. And this will actually look a lot better if we turn this stroke off. This is something that we may use in the project, but it is a great effect and you can get some really good work out of that. And next we have the place image tool. And what this is used for is just to bring in an image of your hard drive into the program. So if we just click on that, it'll go to our hard drive and we just select an image and then we can just drop that in. And that is all that is used for. Very simple and straightforward. So underneath that, we have our crop tool. This is used for masking off any parts of a graphic that you don't want to be shown. So if we just draw out a rectangle just to demonstrate, click back on our crop tool, and we've got all these handles on the side now and on the top and the bottom. If we just drag these in, pay attention to the right hand side layers. Once we let go, you can see what it's done is created a mask, and the mask is used to hide or show objects. So looking at this, it looks like we just cut this off. So if we go back later on and we decide that we actually wanted that bigger than it originally was, we're just going to come back onto our crop tool and then we can actually just bring this back in again, just like that. This may not be something you use often, but it does come in handy. Okay, so we'll just delete this. And next we've got all these different shape building tools here, and just got various shapes such as your rectangle, your circle or ellipse, your rounded rectangle, your triangle. But once you come down to the triangle, you can see we've got the tiny little triangle there in the corner as well. If you hold down on your mouse button, you can see we've got access to a whole different list of shapes in here. And you can create these just by simply selecting something that you want, such as this star, and you just drag down from one side to the other. And you can see we've still got that same gradient because we haven't changed the color since creating that. So when you come to draw these shapes out, if you hold down Shift on your keyboard, that will lock your proportions and it will make it absolutely perfect. And then you just let go when you want it to. And we can come up here to the color wheel and we can change the color of this. So one thing to note straight away is you see this outer line here with a hollow inside. That is known as your stroke, and that is going to be the outline around your item. And inside of that, we got the fill, and that's going to be anything inside of the item. So on this, we want to change the fill and give that a color yellow. And of course, if you want to, you can give this an outline where we've got that black stroke there, and we can change the width for that by coming down to the stroke just down here and changing that width. And by default, you guys may not see any of this that I've got on my screen, but if you want to access any of these menus, you just got to come up to your view menu on your top bar, go down to your studio, and you've got to check on any of these that you want to use and want to be visible on your screen. So if I'm ever referencing anything that you can't see on your screen, it will be in this section here. So moving back onto the shape, we're going to adjust that width to make it a little bit smaller. And that will do fine. So what I want to talk about with the shapes is you're going to have all different options on the top menu bar here. Up here again, we've got them same stroke settings where we can make it bigger and smaller if you want to, as well as doing it down there if you don't want to use that section. You can also change the color of the stroke as well as the fill. And if we head over to the right, we've got all these options here, and these are going to change dependent on what shape you change, and it gives you the option to manipulate them a bit. So such as this bit here, we've got points where we've got 5. We can actually add additional points on here. So we can make it a bigger star or turn it into a sun. And if we come over to the inner radius, we can make this bigger or smaller, just like that. And you can really get the kind of shape you're going for. And you've got all different options of what you can do with this. So there's very little work to be done outside of just choosing the basic shape. So I'm just going to delete that one and we'll just choose another shape just to show you do have different options of all different shapes. So we'll grab that triangle. And up here now we've got the top point. So that should move that from left to right. And some will have more options than others, but that's down to you to have a little play around with all the different shapes. But that's it as far as all these shapes are concerned. They all do the same thing, just different kind of shape. So once again, we'll go ahead and delete that and we'll talk about the text tool, which is next. If you pay attention to the bottom right hand corner, you can see we've got a little triangle again. If we open up that, we've got two different types in here. We've got the artistic text tool and the frame text tool. So the artistic text tool is used if you are maybe creating titles or headers. And if you want to create paragraphs, you will simply change that to the frame text tool. And you just got to drag out a box to any size you like and just start typing away in there to anything you want to put. And of course, if you pay attention to the top left hand side, we've got all our options to change all our text from our fonts to our weights and our size. So we'll go ahead and delete that as well and move on. And underneath that, we now have this color picker tool. This is used for sampling colors from one item that you may want to apply into another one. So if I just draw out a couple of shapes and we've got both of these color yellow, but if I change one to blue and you decide that you want this one to be that blue as well, we can simply just select that color picker tool, select anywhere on that blue, and you can see it's changed color up here. It was yellow, and we just come over here, grab the move tool, and now we can copy that and apply that same blue that we just had. Same as if you wanted it white, we can just select that again, and you notice the blue up here, if we select on the white, that would change just like that, and let's change the color of there as well. So that tool is just generally used just to copy colors from one item to another. And then underneath that, we have this move tool or view tool. And all this generally does is it just moves around your canvas. This is something you don't really need to use at all on this left-hand side, as if we move to the move tool up here or any other tool on here, it doesn't matter what you select. As long as you use your space bar and hold that down, it will change automatically for you and you can still move that around. Then just let go of your space bar. So you never need to use this on the left-hand side, as long as you remember just to hold your space bar and pull around your canvas. And then underneath that, we just got the zoom in and zoom out, and that is all that is really used for. Up here, you can see, just zoom in and zoom out on your document. And if at any point you want to reset this to fit to screen, just hit down Command 0 on a Mac or Control 0 on a PC, and that will fit to screen for you and just center that. So there is all our tools covered, and now we can move on to the next part. So next we're going to focus on this section over here on the right hand side where we have our color, swatches, brushes and appearance. Like I stated before, you may not see all of these menus that I have. If you want the same menus as me, just simply go up to your view menu, go down to your studio and just check on any of these that you require. So moving on, we'll start off with our color, which we've already talked about. It's just simply choose anywhere on here to select the color that you want for the shape that you're working on, as well as having the option to change the opacity underneath that. Then next to that, we have the swatches. This is something that you may use quite often. If you notice underneath this, we've got the recent menu, and this is all the colors that we use so far through the project. And you'll find every time you create something new and give it a color. So we just click on here and we'll color that green. Once we go back into the swatches, you can see it's now been added. So if you ever want to go back later on down the line and find the same colors that you've used, that is how you do so. Underneath that, we've got a drop down menu, and in here we've got kind of a load of presets which have different kind of color tones in them. So whether you're working with something where you require pastel colors or darker colors, you can always find something inside of there. You also have the option to create your own palettes here. These are called palettes with all these colors in it, and we'll do that by coming up to this little menu up there with those 4 lines and a little triangle. And all we've got to do is add application palette. And then we've got one in here called unnamed. So we can go back up to here again, and you can name this by simply going on to rename palette and calling that anything you like. And if you want to start adding colors to this, you just simply choose a color you got. So if we wanted this green, you just got to come over here to this little box of that plus symbol, and there is our first color. And you can just keep on doing that, add that color as well. So that is how you would create your own palettes if you want to use those in the future. So next to this, we have the brushes menu. We talked about this a little bit earlier when using paintbrush tool over here. It's just a way of changing different brushes. And then next to this one, we have the appearance menu. And inside of here, it just gives you additional options to maybe add an extra stroke on top of this one or add an extra fill. So just quickly demonstrate, we'll add another stroke on there and we'll give that a color. And we'll come back into our appearance menu. Then we've got this section here where it says 1 point. If we click on that, we've got some additional options in here where we can make it bigger. We can change the alignment so it sits on the outside of the black one or on the inside. And this is just one of those tools that you'll need to play around with yourself to see what you can achieve. So underneath all of this, we have some more options here. We've got our layers, which we're going to talk more in depth about as we go on. Next to that, we've got the character section. This is where you would change your character styles, whether it be the spacing in between each character or the height or width, etc. Next to that, we have paragraph, and that's just a way of aligning your text in certain ways. And to the right of that, we have the symbol section. So a symbol may be something you may or may not use, but to demonstrate really what this is for, I'm just going to grab a shape. So I'll grab that circle and just drag that out. Then we're going to come back over to the symbol section and we're going to hit this create button. Then that will create this symbol underneath. So the best way really to explain what this really is you kind of treat this as a master template, which can be used to update other shapes that we copy from. So what I mean by that is if I make a duplicate of this here by coming up to edit at the top, and I'll go down to duplicate, I'll have another version of this. I'll just grab that move tool and I'll just be able to pull this over there. And we can just keep duplicating this. If I hit Command J or Control J on the keyboard, it will make it quicker and easier. So I can just keep pulling them away and Command or Control J again. And we'll just make loads of these just for the moment so you can see what it is that I'm doing. So because we've copied from the original symbol, whatever we do now in terms of changing this is going to affect all of these. So if I come up now and I change the color, you can see it's updating on every single one of those. So if I turn off that stroke, make that blue. And that's pretty much what that is for. There is obviously more artistic things you can do with this, but I won't cover that as I don't want to waste too much of your time. But of course, I'm sure there's plenty of YouTube videos that are going to demonstrate more on this subject. And we're just going to delete all of this because we don't need any of that on our screen. So next we have our isometric section. So this can be a little bit intermediate for any of you beginners. So I don't want to cover too much on this subject as it may confuse you. So I'll just demonstrate that quickly by going into this grid settings. And you can see we've got quite an overwhelming menu in here of things you may not understand. So I'd really just rather focus on the things that are important just for now. But I'm sure you can find plenty of videos on YouTube demonstrating what this is for and how to use it. But just as a quick description, it's generally made for creating 3D content. So if I show grid up here with this checkbox, you can see we've got all these little squares over here on the canvas. And if I shut this down, we can change the plane over here to different angles. And this is used really for creating maybe cubes or anything 3D that can turn out to be pretty complex. But we are just going to ignore this for now as I feel it's something that you could learn later on down the line. So after this, we have the stock section. So the stock section has two different websites on this, and on these websites, it has thousands of images that have been taken from people all around the world. And these images are free to use however you like, whether you are creating magazine covers, websites, business cards, anything where you want to use these images, you are free to do so without permission or payment. However, all they do require is that you give them named credit on anything that you do create. So if you create a magazine, you just put their name at the end of it or at the bottom of the photo or anywhere you like within that book. And all we got to do to get started with that is just search for any kind of image that you want. So if we just search for calf, for instance, cafe, you'll see we've got a whole list of different images in here, and just keep scrolling down and you'll find thousands. If you find any that you generally like, you just got to select it and just drag it into the canvas. And you see just up here on the right hand side, it says who made it. So that's just what you got to take note of there, that name, and you just write that anywhere that you've used this image. And that is all you are required to do in terms of using any of those. So I'm just going to get rid of that and delete the picture because we don't actually need it. And I want to turn this off now, this grid that we just put on. And we'll do that by going up to the view menu and we'll just turn off show grid. and then that'll go back to our plain canvas. So next we have down here our stroke menu, which we've already talked about. Next to that, we've got transform, and the transform menu is used for changing different sizes and the X and Y axis on any of the shapes, as well as the rotation and the shear. So if we grab any kind of shape, maybe a circle, and you can see we've got X, or Y locations here, which is either up, down, left, or right. And we've got our width and height, and you can change these to be anything you want, just like that. We've got our rotation here that we can change just by moving that left or right. And we've got the shear option, which you can also kind of skewer that a little bit. And if for any reason you want to rotate this at a different point, we can simply change this up the top by going over to the top menu. We've got this little circle up here with this crossbar in the middle. If you select that and you focus on the shape, you can see we've got this little blue circle in the middle there, and that is our rotation point. So if we just move that any way you like you can move it to that corner. Once we start to rotate this again, it will now rotate from that corner where we moved it from, or you can just move that to any other point that you like. And once again, rotate that and it'll rotate from that angle instead. And that will be the same on the shear as well. So it'll go from that angle as well. And that can of course be anywhere on the shape. You don't have to snap it to a corner. It could be there if you want it to be there, and just rotate that once again. And if we just go ahead and turn that off and delete that, and we'll just create another shape, because there's also another way we could do that. We have these options here, which are these squares, and that will also rotate from whatever corner you want to go from. So the difference really between using this method up there that we just did a moment ago to using the squares down here is when you use a little rotation point, you can move this anywhere around inside the shape you want, whereas these are kind of stuck to the top, middle, or bottom, but they do generally do the same thing. Okay, so next to that, we have our history section, and this is all the steps that we've done all the way since the beginning of the project. So if you find you want to go back to a certain point before you created something or you changed something, you can go back and go to that point. So we'll go all the way to here, and this will take us back to when we wrote the title. And any point throughout the whole project, if you want to go back to there and start again, you can. And that is what that is useful for. Next to that, we have the navigator. And this is simply just a zoom in and zoom out. Nothing special. I don't know what that's doing down there, but we will just delete that and move it. And we'll just zoom back in with Command or Control 0 to fit to screen. So next to that, we've got the styles menu. And this is something that you will find you will probably use a lot. As you can see here, I've got styles from my YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. And these generally, if I was to draw a logo, for instance, I'll grab out another shape, I'll turn off that stroke. And if I wanted this to maybe be the Instagram background, I can just simply select that style, and you can see how that has happened. And all I did there was I created a gradient just by selecting the fill tool, and you can just select any of these and change the colors up here. And something I didn't mention earlier when I was talking about gradients, I said that we can go in here and we can add additional ones by tapping on this line here. We can also do that down here as well by tapping anywhere on this line, just by double tapping that, or single tapping even works. And you can just add as many as you like. So there's two ways of doing that. But back to talking about styles, if you create something that you decide that you want to keep, such as maybe you want to keep this one, we'll just select that shape here, and we're going to go up to edit at the top. If you go down to create style right there and you check that box, it's going to come down here and it will add it into our styles. So this is the one that we just got, and we can simply select another shape and just change it to the same one that we just did. And that is all you do to create a style. You just create your own gradient, and then you just go up to edit, create style, and it will save it in here. And if you right click that, you can rename it. If you don't like it, you can delete it. And that is what styles is generally for, but it will copy all the same settings. If you used to put a drop shadow on this, or a stroke, or any kind of styles on here, and you save it into the styles down here, it will save that to the next one. So to quickly demonstrate that, if I just put a different effect on here, I'm just going to go over to my layers section. I'm going to go down to effects, and I'm going to make this 3D and just make that a little bit bigger. And we'll put an outer shadow on this as well, so we can see how this will actually change in a minute. And we'll close that. So this is a whole new style here. All I've got to do is back up to edit and create that style once again. And it will just come down here like it did before. And if I select this other shape and I select that same style, you can see we've got the exact same thing over here that we do over here. So in a nutshell, that is all about styles and how you would create and use those. So we're going to delete them, and now we can finally move on and start with a project. So I imagine we're around 40 minutes into the video now, so I appreciate you guys sticking around if you're still following along. Unfortunately, it's not something that you can teach in 20 minutes, so the video may take around an hour or so, but I'll try and cover as much as I can in as little time as possible. So in this next bit, we're going to talk about the effects menu, and we'll do that by just creating a quick logo. And just to be quick and simple, we'll just use a YouTube logo. And we'll start off with just by grabbing ourselves a rounded rectangle, and this will be the background. So we're just going to drag that out. We've still got our same style that we just created because we haven't changed anything up here since. But if we go ahead and just color that red, that can be our YouTube background. And then from here, we just need to select another shape, which will be a triangle, which we're going to use as a play button. And when selecting these shapes, it's just a case of just tapping on your mouse and just dragging this out to the size that you want. So something like that is fine. And then you notice we've got this little rotation round white ball at the top there. If you just hover over that and pull it round, that will start to move. If you hold down shift on your keyboard, that will lock into that degree for us, like every 15 degrees or so. So if we lock that to 90 degrees, I'm also going to color this one white, and I'm going to grab that move tool just to move this into place. And before we carry on, I'm just going to center this background piece on the middle of the screen, which we talked about earlier with this menu up here. Now we've selected an item, you can see that none of this is grayed out anymore. And to align this into the center, we're just simply going to the alignment option, and we just got to do it horizontally. And we just do that with that one right there, which is align center. And now that is in the center of the screen. And we could do the same on this one, or we can let the snapping work. And remember when I said earlier, just have snapping turned on or off, which is this magnet right there. So that'll be off right now, and that won't snap anywhere. But if we turn this on, it should hopefully find the center of the shape for us, which is right there. As you can see, we've got that cross across the middle of the screen now, and that's telling us that it's centered also. So that play button is a little bit too big, so just going to shrink that a little bit. I'm going to pull that in because the play button is a bit more narrow than that, and we'll just try and align that again. So we can either do it manually like that or go back into our alignment options up there. So now we've got these two items in our layers. We can also talk about these options up here, which are kind of our shape building tools. And what these allow us to do is select both of these shapes, and we can do different functions. We could add these together. If we add these together now, it's going to combine them to one shape, and that triangle will actually disappear. So I'll demonstrate that by clicking on it. So all we're left with now is the background. So I'm just going to undo that with Command or Control Z. Next to that, we have this subtract option, and this will actually remove the triangle, so it'll be hollow in the middle. As you can see now on our layers, if we was to put another shape behind this and give that a different color, you'll be able to see that this is generally hollow in the middle now. And we'll just delete that, and we'll also just undo so we can go back again to where we just started with these two in the layers. And we've got another option over here, and this is called intersect. So if you click on that one, then that will generally just leave the triangle itself and get rid of the rest of it. And we'll go back again. And then we've got this other option, which is XOR. And in order for this one to work, we need a few more elements on the screen. So if we just tap that now, then it won't really do anything apart from remove the triangle in the middle. However, if we do add another object on here, we can just demonstrate what this does. So I just put that there. And if we just select all three of these now, just grab that move tool and just drag that across to select all three of these. And we now select that tool. You can kind of see what's happened here. It's just took one piece of that shape. It's deleted two pieces of that shape. So it's kind of hollow here and hollow here. And you get some really good effects with this depending on what it is you're trying to do. And it's of course a case of just playing around with it and deciding what you can achieve with that. I'm just going to undo that. And finally, this one on the end, which is divide, we'll just divide objects from it. So we'll probably have to add another shape in here too to demonstrate this. So we'll just put that there, for instance, and we select all of these, grab that move tool once again, and we'll just hit that divide button and we'll watch what happens here. And as you can see, when we divided it, it turns it all into individual pieces. So every little bit of this design now has been broken down. So we can just start to move this around and you can see what's actually happened. Bit difficult to see what's going on with the white ones unless we change the color of this. And then we just move that. It's only that little top piece there that's been cut by the looks of it. But the rest of these here, if you change the colors of this, you can see it's just kind of broke it down into all the individual pieces that made up this shape. So we're just going to come back with Command or Control Z back to where we started. And we can carry on with just creating this logo and talk about the effects. So what I want to do while I've got them both selected is I do want a hollow piece in the middle. So we want to remove that triangle. And to do that, we're just going to come up here and we're going to subtract. And then we are just left with the background and the hollow center, which is what I want. So at this point, we can just resize this if you want to, but you can see it's kind of skewing into a completely different design of what we did. So we'll just undo that again with Command or Control Z. If you want to keep these proportions as you shrink it, just remember to hold down Shift and we can just resize that to anything you like. And I'm going to keep it quite big for the moment so you guys can see it on your screens. So I'll make that a little bit bigger and put it into the center. And now we can just talk about the effects menu, which we will find down here on the bottom. And it just says effects right there, layer effects. So if we tap on this one, we've got all these different options in here where we can blur by simply selecting that and just changing that radius so it kind of blurs out the image. This is really good effect when used in the right way. And we could also add an outer shadow on this, and you just got to change the radius and the offset to anything you want to create that shadow. And we have an inner shadow or an outer glow. Most of these are kind of self-explanatory. You can tell what they do just by reading those, but all we've got to do is just change the radius to give it an outer glow. And if we change the intensity, it'll make it a little bit softer or make it harsher. And we've just got all different options in here, things that you can do. So I don't need to cover all of these, but we've got 3D where we can just change that radius and make the shape look more 3D. And we can also either change the color inside of here, or we can put a gradient on this as well, which these two options we can also do outside of the effects. If you want to put a gradient on this now like we did before, you just grab that fill tool and just drag from one corner to the other, but you've got to select your shape first and then just drag that down. And like I said, you can click anywhere along here to add additional colors if you wanted to. And of course, we could also put a stroke on this if you wanted to, just by selecting the stroke, giving that a color. And we've just got to change the stroke settings on that because that's far too big. So just make the width a little bit smaller. So that is a quick demonstration on just using your effects and using this menu up here with the shape building tools where you can add and subtract. But you can generally get some really good shapes up here if you use the add function a lot. If we just grab a couple of different shapes for now, this is generally how you will get some really unique shapes. So if we have all this and we decide to add all this together, you can see that combines just into one random shape, kind of looks like a hammer or an elephant. So if you didn't understand anything I just covered, feel free to ask me any questions in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as I can. So in just a moment, we're actually going to start a real project. We are going to bring in an image that I drew and we're going to trace around it so I can show you how layering works and how you generally put together vector art. And once we're finished with that, I think you'll be fully confident on using this on your own, creating your own kind of artwork. But before we do that, there's just one tool I really need to go over in order to move on to that step, and that is the pen tool. So I want to give you just a quick introduction of how we would use this. So if we just go over to the left-hand side and we grab our pen tool, and we're just going to come anywhere on the canvas and we just got to tap to make a start point. And we've got that there with that little blue box, and we can make another point anywhere here on the canvas. So we're just going to tap here. And I want to make this stroke a little bit bigger so you guys can see it on your screens, as we all have different size screens. So that'll be big enough. And the way the pen tool works is we've got to grab this bottom point here and we've got to start to move it left, right, up or down to start to make a curve. So if I select and hold my mouse on this button now, and if I pull over to the right, you can see that's starting to pull to the left, and vice versa. If I go to the left, it will go to the right. So basically whatever you do here, it's going to go backwards to what you're trying to achieve. So if we go down here, it's going to go up. If we go up, it's going to go down. So you always got to think about it as just doing the opposite of what it is you're trying to do. A lot of people are intimidated by this tool, but I can promise you it's really easy once you get your head around it. And if for any reason you don't fully understand what I'm explaining in this video, I do have a separate video on the pen tool that I have recorded, and I will link that in the top right hand corner now. So feel free to go and check that out. And I can promise you after watching that one, you'll be fully confident on how to use this. But of course, I will try and explain it the best I can as well while we go along with the project. But as I stated, you just got to click on that and drag. And the more you move down, the higher up the curve will go. And vice versa, the more you come up, further down the curve will go. And it will all make sense as to why when we come to drawing around our image. But for now, moving on from this, we're just going to delete it and we're actually going to get started on a real life project. Like I said, I really want you guys to follow along with this and download the image and import it, as I'm really a strong believer in you learn by doing. I just don't want you to watch me do it, as I feel it's something you have to do yourself in order to really understand the program and come away from this course being confident in carrying on by yourself. Okay, so I've just imported my design that we are going to use now for the rest of this tutorial. And all it is a drawing of a little monster that I created. But before we begin doing any of this, I just want you to quickly pay attention to where this says here, no scale with object, and it says with scale with object. This is something really important to remember when it comes to using either the pen or the pencil tool. And before we get started, I'm going to demonstrate why this is important. So if I click on the one here that says scale with object and I decide to resize this, if I want to make this guy really small, which I just drag that all the way down and make them small as you like. So say something about that big, you can see it still looks really perfect and everything's still crisp and clear. And if we zoom into him, we can zoom really close and we just keep going and you can still see everything's absolutely perfect in terms of the lines are smooth and it looks as though he was drawn originally at that size. And I'm just going to zoom back out again. However, if we don't have scale with object turned on and we now decide to turn this one smaller, which doesn't have scale with object, and as we start to make him smaller, you'll see what starts to happen here. You can see it's all starting to break as he gets smaller. All the lines are starting to come together. The graphic is losing all of the information. And when it gets the same size as that one there, you can see the differences here. You can't even distinguish what this is meant to be. And if we zoom in down here, you can just see it's just going to be a complete mess. And there it is. That is absolutely useless compared to the one that we had with scale with object, where that guy is still the same as he was originally. And all we need to remember with this is just simple. Once we're on the pen tool or the pencil tool, if we focus on the stroke section, which is where we're going to be using most of this when we come to draw, just down here, you can see we've got scale with object. Just make sure you always have that checked all the time. Because if you don't, you could end up with a graphic that looks like this when you come to resize it. But if you find that is a little bit too late to do that now, you can actually go back in and do it all individually. It's just going to take you a lot more time when it's easy just to get it right from the beginning. But I hope you understand why I feel that is an important thing to share with you. So I'm just going to Command Z to get these guys back to the normal size before we carry on. And I just want to mention one more thing before we start drawing this little guy. And that is all about layering. So once we start drawing, we're going to end up with hundreds and hundreds of layers depending on how complex the drawing will be. And I'll demonstrate that just by opening up this group. And you can see inside of these groups, I've got layers and more layers inside of all these different groups. And this makes up just one drawing alone. And there's just hundreds in here. So what is really good practice is to name your layers, like you can see here. All the important elements, it's always good to name them. So when you're going through all of this, you can find what it is that you're trying to find, which will become very important when you want to start coloring or maybe moving things around. Such as if I want to grab this ear now, I can just select that and I can just start moving it. But please don't worry about the fact that we do have so many layers in there and it looks really complicated. It's pretty straightforward and I'll explain it as we go along. So if you are ready, then I want you to load in this image. If you've downloaded it from the link in the description, load it into Affinity Designer simply by dragging it into the program and it will load up the same size as this. Or you can start a new project like we did before, come up to File and you can hit Place and then that will take you to your hard drive and you can bring it in that way. So before we get started, there's just a couple more steps that we need to do. So the first step is that you make sure that you have locked this layer with that little padlock there. That means that we can't click on it and we can't disturb it while we're drawing around the item. If for any reason this isn't locked, just select the layer itself and just hit that little padlock right there on the right hand side. And the next thing I need you to do is just drop the opacity on this layer, and we're just going to bring that down to around 10% or so. And this is because we want to use this to trace around. That's all it's going to be used for, is a guide. So if we drop that to about 10%, I can see that really well on my canvas. You may not on your screen if you can't just turn that opacity up a little bit. And you may also find it a lot easier if this background is white rather than transparent. So just to change that quickly, if we come up to the document setup, we can just simply make sure that we are on color and then check off that transparent background there. So if we look at this guy, he's really not that difficult to draw. He's actually just made up of a few basic shapes and curves, such as on the eyes, we just got circles here, and these ears are ovals, and we'll just simply go through all this as we go along. So when it comes to creating vector art, all you really need to keep in mind is that everything you see is its own shape or section or piece. And what I mean by that is this hand here, if you follow this curve, that's going to be one piece. That thumb is going to be its own piece. Same with the nose, that'll be a separate piece. The eyes, the ears, everything on it is its own individual element. And this is why it becomes important when we come to layering and renaming everything so we can find what we need. And the basic idea is we just got to copy around the shapes. So we've got to focus on the drawing and see what kind of shapes make up this picture. So starting with the outline of this guy, it's just basically an egg shape. And we can recreate that just by coming and grabbing the ellipse tool and just start to drag that out. And what we want to do is we want to turn off the fill on this so we can actually see behind it. So if we come over and we turn off the fill, and we click on our stroke because we want to make this bigger, come down to the width, and we're just going to make that stroke a little bit bigger to as big as you like. And if we just put it on about 3, I think that's going to match the original that I drew. And then we just got to go ahead and grab our move tool up here and just start adjusting these handles to kind of meet up where we started drawing it and matching up my original lines. So you can see this is generally how I started this drawing. I just basically drew out an egg. So straight away, that right there is our first piece done. And like I said, it's always good to name your layers as you go along. So we just call this one body before we continue with the next piece. And I will warn you, it is going to start to look quite messy until we start to layer this and color things in. But you just got to bear with me and try and understand why things are done in this way. Okay, so next we've got a circle for the eye. So we can go ahead and grab that ellipse tool again and just draw out a circle. Remember, hold down your shift key to keep that perfect. And we'll just go ahead and grab our move tool and try and match this circle that we originally drew. And just hold that shift to bring it in. And just try and find the same size that I've done with the picture in the background. If you find it snapping and it's doing your head in, then just come and simply turn that off at the top. And just try that again. Just to align it wherever you want. This doesn't have to be perfect. It can just be a guide. It's just an idea of you putting it all together. And of course, you can use your arrow keys on your keyboard just to move these in little increments if you find it too hard to do on the mouse. And we are going to be able to copy and paste with this guy. I specifically drew him this way so I could demonstrate we could do that. But I'm quite happy with that circle for the moment. So if we come off that one, and then we've got another circle in the middle, as you can see. So we can go ahead and grab another round one again. Just hold that shift to keep that perfect. Go back to your move tool. And just try and match that same size there. Just hold your shift again, like I said. And just get that as close to the back as you can. And that is fine. And then we also have these two in the middle here. So we can just cheat here. We can just hit Command or Control C to copy, or Command and Control V to paste. And then if we just hold in shift while dragging this down, it will keep it a perfect proportion. And then we can just move that where we want it. And then just try and get that to the size that we want as well. Like I said, it will start to look messy. Things are going to start overlapping and looking untidy, but don't worry about that for now. We will clear that up in a little while. So once again, we're going to Command and Control C to copy, Command and Control V to paste. Make this one a little bit smaller, holding down that shift again. And then we just match this one down here. Please remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is just a guide and something to get you guys started. And what we're going to do now is we can actually color these ones. Okay, so if we give this one a fill of white, and we can turn off the stroke on that, and we're going to do the same on the one underneath it. We'll give that a fill of white, and we'll turn off the stroke on that one. And we can do the same on the eyeball. We'll turn that one black, and you can turn the stroke off on that one because we don't need it either. So what we need to address next is we've got the eyelid inside of here, and we're going to make this up using the pen tool. So if we go ahead and grab the pen tool, and we're just going to draw this anywhere outside of here. So we're going to start roughly where this curve ends. So we'll go from about there, and we need to come over to this side. So roughly about the same place as you had it before. If you turn snapping back on, it might just snap into its perfect position as it is there. So if we just go over, and it should align, and we'll just snap that there. So once we've done that, it's just a case of holding down on this square, and then we start to pull up, and then that's going to make that bend down to try and find that curve that we got. And like I said, it don't have to be perfect. If for any reason you do want this to line up a little bit better, just go over here, grab your node tool, and then you can actually just click this one and adjust it and move it into position. So once you've done that, we're going to click back on the pen tool, and we're going to tap on this little square here that we just moved. And what I want you to do now is I just want you to draw any kind of random line all the way around here, and we've got to match it up on this side. We've got to attach it. So if we just start here, and you can make this as messy as you like, you can go anywhere on the canvas that you want. It really doesn't matter. And we're going to go all the way around to the point we can just attach these together. And even though it's curved around there, this doesn't matter, and I'll show you why in a moment. So as of right now, this has now made up its own shape. So we're going to give that a stroke, and we give that a stroke of 3 as well, which we've got down there. And if we turn this off, you can see that will now disappear if we just grab our move tool and we turn that back on. And we can color this white as well like we did before, but leave your stroke on as we need that. Give that a color of white. And I've just noticed that we wasn't actually on the layer. So we just do that again, choose that white. And this looks really messy at the moment and kind of looks like it's destroyed our picture. But this is what I want, so I can demonstrate what we're going to do. So if we call this one here, if I can find it, this is why you need to name this. It's important. This can be our left eye. What we actually need to do now is we need to nest this one inside of this layer. And what I mean by nesting is we're going to select this one. We're going to drag it all the way down. And we've got this big blue bar that you can see there. And what I want you to do is just pull it over to the right slightly until this bar shrinks. You can see it's got a little bit smaller there. So it's gone bigger and smaller. Once it goes smaller and you drop it inside of this layer will then become a mask for this. So it's going to hide anything outside of this layer. And if you don't understand what I mean by that, if I just quickly click off this now, you can see we've got the eyelid and the rest of it has disappeared because it's now masked inside of this circle. So when I stated it doesn't matter how messy it was out here, it's because it's hidden and you're never going to see it. So now we just got to create the top eyelid as well. So once again, we're going to grab that pen tool and we'll just try and find out where it ends and just meet on both sides of this. Turn off that snapping again if it's driving you nuts. And just try and match that curve. There is fine. And then remember, we just need to get as messy as you like. It really doesn't matter as long as you connect these two pieces together, which then will make this up to a shape. And we just give that a color white like we did before. And the exact same thing as we did with the left eye down here. We now just got to drag this one in there. It doesn't matter whether it's on top of this or underneath it, as long as it is inside the eye. And you can see it's done the exact same thing that we did before. But if we look at it now, we can see the eyeball is kind of on top of everything, and you don't want that. So this is where it comes in handy to start grouping. So if we select all 3 of these, because this makes up the eyeball, if you hold down Command, and I think it may be Control on a Windows PC, and just select all of these at the same time, that gives you the ability to select all of those, and you just hit Command or Control G. And then we've got a group, and then that will make up the eyeball, and then we can name that. And then we've got the exact same principle now with bringing this in here, but this needs to be at the bottom of these two, as if we just bring it in at the top of these, it's still going to be on top of the eyelid. Whereas if we drop this now underneath these, the eyelid will cover the eyeball, as you can see, just like that. Then next, what we need to do is, because we can see this line coming through the eye here, we have to actually give a fill on the eyeball itself, or the left eye, sorry. So if we go ahead and give that a color fill of white, that will now hide that line in just a moment. But this is another reason why layering structure is important. The reason we can still see this line behind here is because of the way this is laid out. If you see, the body is actually on top of the left eye. So the way layering works is what's on top will be basically at the front, and what's at the bottom will be behind. And in this case, we want the eye on top of the body. So if we just move that above that, you can see that has fixed our problem now. So you can see that's pretty simple, and we've already got a few layers in here, and it's not as complicated as you may have thought it would be. And now we've got the advantage of copying and pasting this. So if we click on the layer itself and we hit Command and Control C and Command and Control V to make a paste of that, we can just drag this over and we can just move that into place. And it really is as simple as that. But quickly, I'm just going to Command Z or Control Z to undo that because I want to demonstrate something else for you if you need this at any point. I'm just going to turn snapping on again up the top. And I've still got these two copies here. And we're going to move this one over to its position. But what I want you to do is hold down Shift when you drag. If you do that, then it's always going to lock that into the top and bottom so you can't go out of alignment. And you can see that by that orange line that we've got in the middle there. So as I'm holding it and I'm dragging, it won't move up or down, as you can see. So that really helps if you just want to keep it perfectly straight. If I just let go of that and I'll start moving it, it can just easily kind of move out of place. So if you always want it aligned perfectly with that one, just hold down that Shift button. And that's just a quick tip for you. And just align that wherever you want it. And that's easy. So we've done two eyes now. So as soon as you did the first one, it took you 2 seconds to do the next one. And if we continue to look at our little guy that we've got here, we just got to make a couple of horns and ears. So the ears are another easy one we can do. That's just with an oval. So if we just drag out an oval and we're going to rotate this and we'll grab that move tool and just put that into place and try and match this up. We need to turn off the fill here so we can see through the middle of there as we try and line this up. So we're just going to resize that and try and match up these lines that I originally created and just rotate that a little bit. And just do your best to try and match up what I've done. And just keep rotating and eventually you will get there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like I said, this is just a guide. But that right there, I think will be perfectly fine. Once again, you can see it's starting to get messy with these lines overlapping. But once again, we will sort that out in the layering. So to do this in a circle, this is a very easy process. We're going to select the one we just created. We're going to copy and paste this with Command or Control C to copy, Command and Control V to paste. And then we are just going to hold Command and Shift at the same time on a Mac. And I think it's Control and Shift on a Windows computer whilst we're dragging this in. And it will actually pull it in inside of itself just like that. So that is our ear created, and it's always good to group these as well. But what we could do is if we nest the inside one inside of the big one, then that's going to make it easier. And we can just now give that a fill again because we've finished that. And we can call this one left ear. And we can begin to arrange this as well. So we're going to bring this behind the body because this is going to be the one that's right at the back. And there you go. You can see it's starting to come together. We can't put a fill on the body itself as of till we get to the end. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to see all our details underneath it. So that will be our last step. And once again, we can now just copy and paste this ear to make it quick and easy. Command and Control C and Command and Control V. And up here, we have got our flip options, which I talked about earlier. And here we just want to flip horizontally. And we can just move that over. Once again, hold down that Shift key to keep that perfectly straight. And just let that lock into place. And then that's that ear done as well. So you can see how easy and quick this generally is. And now we just got to kind of work with this horn. And we can kind of create this horn using an ellipse. But I'm going to zoom in on this so you can watch me do this a little bit better. And we'll go ahead and grab that ellipse. I'm just going to draw it out roughly like that. And I'm going to rotate this. And I know you may be thinking this is going to look a little bit strange, but just bear with me. I'm going to explain what we're going to do here. So if we just come back and just try and move this around and align it the best we can, what we're actually going to do now is we're going to convert this circle into a curve. And we do that just by this menu up here. And what convert to curves means is it makes this into a unique shape or a custom shape. And that means that we can manipulate that shape using the node tool. So if we just convert that to curves real quick, and then we come over to our node tool, and you see we've got these points that we usually had before, but we can make these extra points that I talked about earlier by tapping anywhere on here. And we can just start to pull in and just start to make the general shape that we want. And we can adjust these handles and get that as close as you can to match the shape that you're trying to do. So it's a little bit of fiddling around, but you will get there. We can delete that one. And we can just simply pull this one in on itself. And it's just a case of really trying to move it around till you get the curve that you're going for. And then just resizing that. And then there you can see we've got generally what we was going for. You could spend a little bit more time on this if you wanted to get it even better. And then once again, once that's complete, we can just come off that and we can give that a fill as well of white. And we can do a Command C for copy and Control C for paste. And we can just paste that and we'll flip that again like we did before. Hold down that shift so we keep it perfectly straight and just bring that where you want it. And then there is our horns done as well. And just a quick note, if we do come back in on the horns and you want it a bit more pointed at the top and stuff, if we tap back on this and we go back to our node tool, we've got these little options up here. So if we select this, we've got these options of this convert where we can make it a sharp end or a smooth end. So if we tap that to sharp, you can see it's now become a sharp horn rather than a smooth one at the top. And you can do the same on there. And if we zoom back out, you can generally see what you've got now. So it depends on which one you prefer as to what you want to keep. I'm just going to keep it the way it was just for now. Although I do generally think the sharp horn did look better. But moving on, if we just focus on some more of these shapes that we've got here, we can just simply go into the shape building tools and look for anything that resembles what we've already got. So if you take a look at the nose, the way I think I originally created this is I used this tier tool at the bottom there and just select that and we can just drag this out and we'll just try and match what we've got here in terms of size and width. And if we turn off that fill, we'll be able to see through it. And then it's just a case of just matching this up to what we had. And now we can just do the same as we did before. We just convert this shape to curves so we can manipulate it and becomes custom. And first of all, we'll change that to a smooth so it matches that curve on there. We'll do that with the convert option at the top. And we'll just go ahead and grab that move tool again. Just try and resize this to match what we've got. And it may not be perfect, but we can always come back in and grab that node tool and just readjust that and try and go for what it is that we got here. Like I said, it don't have to be perfect. You guys just have a little play around with it, see if you can get what I've got here. If not, it's not important. It's just more about learning how this all goes together. And I generally think that is probably close enough to what I've got. So that can be our nose finished. And then we can just go ahead and give that a fill as well. And before we gave that a fill, you'd notice that we did have a line in the background here. So if we just turn that back off while we draw that out quickly, we're just going to go ahead and grab that pen tool again, find the end roughly where this is. And we'll just try and meet the ends of this and match that curve. And once again, we are going to draw around this as messy as you like. It's entirely up to you. Just so it gives us the option to color this in later on if we wanted it to be separate color to the nose. So we just match that together so it becomes a shape. Hit the escape button to come off that and we can just color that white. And then we'll just place that inside of the nose, just like that. So it masks it off. And then we can simply just name this layer the nose. And we'll just zoom back out again. So I hope this is all starting to make sense to you, how this all comes together. It is really easy and everything that you design is just made up of basic shapes. But before we continue, I want to address these arms here. What we generally need to do here is I've got to combine this shape here with the body itself. And this will be important when we come to color it and can make it quite difficult with highlights and shadows if you don't do it this way. So we're just quickly going to center this again because it keeps moving a little bit. And we're going to draw these arms in. So we're going to grab this pen tool and we'll just follow this curve. So we just start off here and we'll just come down here and draw that out. And then once again, you just select this and you start to pull down to go up and just match that the best you can. And then we want to come back to this circle. I want you to tap on the circle and then we're just going to come over here and just draw this anywhere you like. It really doesn't matter. And then we're just going to come up and I just want you to connect this together. So now we have that shape there and we can just hit escape to come off that. And I want to grab that move tool. I'm going to make a copy of this. So Command C or Control C and Command or Control V to paste. We're going to flip this around with a horizontal at the top. Hold down that shift like we did before to keep that perfectly aligned. I'm just going to bring that over here and try and match that as well as you could with the other. That will be perfectly fine. And then what we need to do now is combine all of these into one shape. Don't worry about this line sticking through here because that'll be hidden by the hand itself. But you can see how vector art can get quite confusing for beginners. But what we're going to do is we're going to select this hand or arm as well as the one underneath it. And we just hold down Command on the Mac. And I think that may be Alt on a Windows computer. And we're going to go down to the body as well, and we want to select that one as well. So if you hold down Command or Alt while you tap on that one also, it's going to select all three of these. And then we can simply go up to our top menu bar that we talked about earlier, and we're going to add these together. Just like that. So now we've got all this as one shape. But since we've done that, it's now moved this body all the way to the top. So we just need to bring that back down to where it belongs. And if you remember, their ears have to be right at the back. So we're just going to layer that above these ears. So bring that down and we'll drop that, and then that is back to where it needs to go. So next we're going to do the trousers, and we can't just grab the pen tool and draw a line in here like we usually would, as we're going to want to colour these two different colours, the trousers and the main body itself. So in order for us to do that, we're going to have to draw the trousers out to give them their own piece. But I'm going to show you a quick trick of how we can do that. So before we continue doing this, I just want to apologise to everybody for the length of this video. I imagine we're approaching around an hour and 20 minutes so far. I know this has turned out to be a pretty long video, but it is really hard to explain so much information in such a short time. So for those of you who have stuck around to this point, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to teach you this. And if you do make it all the way to the end, please give me a thumbs up and let me know in the comments. And of course, if you are enjoying this video, then please subscribe. So what we're going to do to make this quick is we're going to make a copy of this body curve that we got. So if we Command or Control C, Command Control V to paste, and we'll rename this one. We're just going to name it pants to be quicker. And once you've done that and you are selected on your pants layer, let's just go over to the node tool on the left hand side. And we're going to create 2 points here. We're going to put it roughly at the top of this belt on both sides. So we'll put one here, and we'll go ahead over here and we'll put another one in there as well. Then after we've done that, we're going to go over and temporarily turn off this body curve. So if we do that by just hitting that checkbox button there, that will make that invisible just for the moment. It's going to make it easier for us, which you'll understand that in a moment. So if we click back on our pants layer, and we got these 2 points that we just created, what I want you to do now is just tap on one, go over to the other side, hold down Shift while tapping on this one, and then that will select the 2 points that we just created. Then I want you to come up to this top menu bar where we have this action menu, and inside of it we've got a few options such as break curve, close curve, smooth curve, join curves and reverse curves. So at this point all we want to do is break the curve, which will allow us to separate this bottom part from this top part. So if we hit that button now, you can't visibly see anything right now, but we can see over in the menu on the layers we now have 2 different parts. So if we just select this top one and we delete that, we are simply left with this curve at the bottom now, which is going to make it a lot easier for us. Then what we're going to do is come over and grab our pen tool, and we're just going to draw this line going across here now, and we're going to connect them together. So if we just put one there, maybe put a center one in there so it's easier to curve this, and then just do that over the other side as well. And just curve that the best you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. And we'll hit escape twice to come off that once it's finished. So you can notice straight away that we've still got this in 2 individual pieces. And what we need to do is actually combine these together. So if we select the curve that we just made and hold down Command or Alt and select the pants underneath it as well. If we come back up to our menu and we select our node tool, and then at the top here on the action menu, we're going to come over to where it says join curve, which is that one there. So if we select that, then what has happened here is these 2 bits on the end here have now joined into one shape. So it starts here, comes all the way around here, comes back here and ends there. So all that's left to do now is we've got to take this red circle and we've got to connect it to that other circle. And we do that just by simply dropping it on top. So when it turns yellow, like that, just let it go. And the reason that I just did this the way we did with breaking up the body is because it's going to just align perfectly now. If we turn the body back on, you can see the lines are just absolutely perfect all the way around it. Whereas if we drew this in ourselves, it may have misaligned. It just wouldn't have looked as good or clean. And now we've done that, we could actually come in here and give these trousers a different colour if you wanted to from the rest of the body. But we're just going to turn that off for now because we've got to draw in the detail. And now we've just got to do the exact same thing as before. We'll grab ourselves a pen tool again. We're going to draw in this belt and put it inside of the layer. So if we just start to draw this, I just start here, bring it to the centre again like we did before, get the rough shape that I'm going for. And back over here. And remember, if you don't quite understand the pen tool, I do have a separate tutorial on this. And we're just going to select a point over here and we're going to try and curve that as well. So that'll do for the moment. And then we'll just get messy again like we always do and just put these lines anywhere you want. It doesn't matter as long as you connect this into one shape. And we'll just colour that white just for the sake of doing so quickly. And once again, we want to join that inside of the pants layer. So we want to embed that. And to do that, remember, we just bring it down, wait for that big blue bar, pull it over to the right, wait for that to indent and let it go. And while we are inside of the pants layer, we can start just filling in this detail here, and we do that with a pen tool. So once again, we'll grab that pen tool, we'll just start to draw ourselves some curves just to get the details in here. Start to curve that to try and bend it around to look like the pocket. Grab that node tool and move that slightly if you need to. So that's okay for one. Double tap on escape to come off that, and go ahead and create another one over this side. Bend that as well. Double tap on escape to come off it. And you'll notice that one's come out up here and it's gone onto the top. So what we need to do is drag that back down inside of the pants and drop it underneath the belt. So then when we click off it, you can't see it through the belt itself. And this one here as well needs to be moved underneath the belt. And we just got to continue just doing these additional lines. So here, this is a straight line. So if you hold down shift again, like I said before, while going vertical or horizontally, it will give you that perfect straight line. And just drop that down. And you can see, because we're still inside of here, even if we drew down here, you can't see that line. It's going to cut off there. Then we're just going to come up and we'll create this little piece here. And just start to bend that. That will do to be quick. And just always make sure that your layers are inside of the pants layer or whatever layer you are working on at the time, because they do sometimes move. So just drag that back in again so it remains inside of that one. And finally, we just finish off these little details inside of the trousers, and we'll just do that simply by creating that same kind of curve. And we'll just do that on both sides. Hit escape twice to come off that one, and we'll just do the one underneath. And same over there. And once we've finished that, I want to show you another thing that we can do inside of here. So if we grab our node tool and we select one of these, and we'll notice straight away over here that it's moved outside of where I wanted it to go again. So I just want to drag that back down to where it belongs. And then we just select either that one or that one. And once you've selected one of these, if you go down to the stroke menu, and we got this option down the bottom called pressure. If you tap on the pressure menu, what we can do inside of here is we can make this stroke go from being wide on one side to being thin on the other. And I'll demonstrate that just by dragging this down. So you can see just there, it's gone fatter on one side all the way to going thinner on the other. And what we need to do here is I want to actually drag both of these down. So it's virtually invisible at the moment, but I want it to be wider in the middle. So if we select another point there right in the center and drag that up, this is a kind of effect I want to go for, where it goes thin on the edge to being wider, then it fades back out to being thin again. And I want to do the exact same thing on the one underneath. So we just drag both these corners down and we've got that same effect there. And this is kind of the same principle of what I've done here with the chin, or what I've done with these warts. It just goes thinner on one side and wider in the middle and back to being thinner again. So we just quickly get them out of the way and draw those in. So if we go on the body menu, and now we just start creating some of this detail. Then we just put one over here on this side and we bend that to where we need it to be. So automatically you can see that we've already got this effect where it's wider in the middle, and that's because it's saved our last settings that we used in the pressure menu. So if you want this turned off at any point, you need to reset that. But for now, we're going to leave it the way it is. And this curve that we just created, which is a chin, we now want to put inside of the body. And we just need to hit escape twice just to come off that shape. And we'll just continue by quickly getting all these warts done. And just draw that to the rough shape that you want. And grab that node tool just to make that a little bit wider and position that better to what I had. And that should do for a quick demonstration. And all I'm going to do at this point is just copy and paste this just to make it quicker, which is Command C and Command V, so we can just get all these done. So I'll try and speed up the video a little bit at this point. So I've made all of the warts now, but as we can see in the layers menu, they're not inside of the body where I wanted them to be. So we're going to select all of these by selecting the top one, holding down shift and select that bottom one to select all of those. And then we're just going to drag these into the body. So if I close the pants for a moment, it's going to be easier for us to see. And then we just drag these down inside of the body. Then what we're going to do is look for a shape that represents the mouth. So we'll go over to the shape building tools again. And that one there, that segment tool, I think is what I originally used. So if I'm going to draw that out, I'm going to rotate that round. Hold down shift to keep that locked into place. And turn off that fill. And we still got this same stroke where it goes from being thinner to being thicker. So to turn that off, we need to come back down to pressure and reset that curve. and then that'll be what we need it to be. So I'm going to bring this down, try and get the rough shape that I've got, drag that up, and just bend that to where it needs to go. And then that is perfect, but all I've got to do now is just bend the top of this, and to do that we're going to convert to curve so it makes it a custom shape. And we'll grab our node tool, and we can just put a point in the middle, and we can just start to bend this now. And it doesn't have to be perfect because we can hide it behind the nose in just a moment. But if we come up and we convert that to a smooth point, it's going to make it curve a lot better. So we just move that back up into place so it just looks more natural. And we'll just call this one mouth. And looking at the layer structure, once again, that needs to be underneath the nose. So we just drag that down underneath it, and then we can no longer see the line of the mouth. And then, of course, we've just got the details inside of the mouth, which is just the teeth. And I'm pretty sure I just used an oval for that. So if we just draw that out to try and meet what I've already done, just line that up into place. And just try and get that as close as you can. We'll just make a copy of this. Command C or Control C, Command V or Control V to paste it. Bring it over the other side. And we can fill these ones in now as well. So we fill that one. And we also fill that one. All we got to do now is select both of these and just drag them inside of the mouth like we did before. Just like that indent. Then that bit is complete. And we've got another tooth there if you want to do that. If you want to, it's entirely up to you. We could just make another copy and paste that. And then just move that into place. And that'll be perfectly fine. And then we just got two more shapes in here, which that one was built off a heart for the tongue. So if we grab ourselves a heart and we just try and copy the rough shape that we've already got, just turn off that fill for a moment so we can see the outlines, and just grab that move tool and just try and line that up. And then we can put that fill back on again and just drag that inside of the mouth with the rest of it. Then we just got this final piece in there, which is a teardrop tool I used just to create that. Just going to draw that out to roughly the same size. And just drag that down inside of the mouth once again. And then that is complete. The mouth is finished. And we now have the choice to give all of these individual colors, including the mouth. We can make that black if you want to. So you can see how it all comes together. You can color the tongue and the teeth and all of that other stuff. So I'm just going to go back and just create all that back to white like we did before. And we can close the shape of the mouth down now as that's complete. And on the original drawing, I did have a wart here on the nose, so we could simply come in and just select one of those and make a copy of that and just paste that. Then just drag the outside of the body for the moment. And we can just move this above the nose. And just give that a little curve like I did before. And I think roughly around there I put it. And if we put a fill on that, it will layer it above the nose. You can make that bigger or smaller if you want. It's entirely up to you. I'm going to leave that like that. But that is how I did the wart on the nose. So this guy is nearly complete now. So all we've got to do really is just draw the feet, which are basic shapes. And we've got to draw the hands, and he is pretty much done at that point. So we're going to do the feet now, as this is going to be quick and easy. We're going to select our segment tool and just draw out the rough shape that we want. And just move that into place with the move tool. Just like that. We're just going to readjust that a little bit. Just drag that out a little bit more. Then we're going to come and convert this to curve so we can manipulate that shape and make it custom. Once done that, grab that node tool. I'm going to select this node and delete it. Give us a more of a shape that we're going for there. And then just drag that out a little bit more. And to get the curve I've got there, we'll just put another point in here. We'll put one down there and we'll just delete that one there. Just drag that in a little bit on itself. Just like that. And then that should be the outline of the shoe done. And we can just go ahead and stick a rectangle inside of there if you want to just create that line. So we just do that quickly. And then we can put that inside of the shoe. And I believe the shoe has actually gone all the way to the bottom here. So I'm going to move that back up again. And remember, this is why it's important to name layers so you can find everything. I'm going to drag that into the shoe. So now that is nested inside it like it was before. And I'm going to give that a fill of white. And we'll just go ahead and grab that pen tool again just to quickly create these laces. And we just put one here. Just give that a little bit of a curve. And if we just adjust the width for this just to make it fatter, that is how we can create the laces pretty easily. I'm just going to hit escape twice to come off that. I'm just going to copy and paste these to make it a lot quicker. And we'll do that twice. And then we'll get that move tool and we can just move these into place. And then that will do to quickly demonstrate. We can now color the fill on the shoe to make that white. And if we close that and we make a copy of this, remember with Command C and Command V or Control C and Control V, we want to then flip that around horizontally And then we're just going to move it over here to the other side. And just line that up the way it was. And finally, we just got to draw in the hand. So if we just grab the pen tool, we're going to zoom in here because we'll just copy and paste again once this one's finished. We just got to find the starting point. If we start on this curve here by placing our first node there, somewhere in the center, and we just join this around to try and get that rough curve that we're going for. And then we just continue to come round. And then we've got these little curves here. All you got to generally do is stop there and start here again. And then just make that curve a little bit. And then just keep doing that all the way around until you've got the shape that you're going for. And then when we get to this point, again, remember we need to connect these together to make that a shape. So we grab that node tool and we select this one and put it on top of that once it turns yellow. And then that now becomes our hand. And finally, we just got to put some details in here so we can go ahead and grab that pen tool and just draw in some lines. It's going to be quick at this point so I can get this video finished, but you guys can spend more time on making this look better. So I'm going to hit escape twice to come off that shape. And we just need to find out where that is. It's that one there. We've got to drag that into the hand. Make sure that's inside and we can continue drawing again. And we'll just do the next piece. Escape twice to come off it. As you can see, these aren't perfect here, but I do want to be quick now. So I'm just going to put one here. Same principle that we did before with the pressure down here. Just select that center piece, drag these two down, and then we've got that right there. And then we can just hit escape twice, just keep drawing these in, and just get that all the way across. Or you can copy and paste these, whatever you want to do, it's entirely up to you. And then that is our hand complete. So if we come back down to the hand, we can now give that a fill, make that white, and then if we bring it in front of the body, it will get rid of that line in the background. So we just got to drag this all the way up. This can be on the top layer. It's not really important as long as it's on top of the body. And somewhere along the line, a couple of our curves wasn't inside of the hand. So we just got to go ahead and find those ones now. There's one. So if we just drag that inside of the hand. And then that is fine. That is our hand finished. And we can color that just like we would normally. Just put that back to white for now. And with the thumb, I just use an oval for that. So just draw out an oval. And I'm going to reset that pressure. And we can just rotate that. Grab that move tool and just try and get that into position. So there is fine. All we've got to do with that now is just drag that behind the hand. And then that is our thumb done. And finally, we just need another line there just for that little bit of detail. So grab that pen tool and just drag that down there and just curve that. And then that will complete that. And if we just go ahead and find out where this is, which is right down the bottom there, if we bring this up all the way to the top, we put it underneath our thumb. And then if we just go ahead and group all of these ones together, that now becomes one piece. And we can just zoom back out again with Command 0, Control 0. And we make a copy of this, Command C, Control C, Command V and Control V to paste it. Flip that around. We're going to bring that over this side. And then we can just match that up. And then that piece is done. And then we'll just notice the last thing here is these ears are overlapping there. And that's because we haven't given our body a fill yet. So the moment we give our body a fill, that will all disappear. And that is absolutely finished. Apart from one little detail, which are these knuckles here, which we forgot to put into the group. So if I come back up here, it's just these ones here. So we select all of these by holding down Shift on the top and the bottom. And we Command G to group that. And all we've got to do is make a copy of that because we need two of these and paste it. And we've just got to drag these inside of the hands. So there's one. And we can go ahead and close that one again. And then we just got to drag the other one inside of this hand. And at the moment, it's not visible because it's still over this side. So we actually need to move it and just bring it over here into place. And then that one now becomes a part of that group. So if we turn that one off, it will all disappear and back on. The same as the one over there. So there we go. All we have to do now is come to our top layer, go to our bottom, hold down Shift, and just ignore the background. Just select the one above that. And we'll just go ahead and Command G to group all that together so we can move this guy around individually. And this background layer, we no longer need it because you guys have already drew this out now. So we just delete that. And you are free now just to come back in here and start coloring your monster as any color that you like. As you can see, And at the moment, the pants are a different color because we haven't actually colored that one in. There's our pants there. If we give that a brown, for instance, you can see that's now colored. We select our mouth. We can give that a color as well. And you can begin coloring this guy any color that you like. And at this point, if you're ready to save this guy, you can do that by going up to File. And you can save or save as if you want to save the project. If you want to export this as a final piece, you just go down to the export menu there. And inside of here, you got all different options of how you can export this. You use PNG if you want to export it as a graphic, or JPEG if you want it as an image. And it's just a case of selecting any of these and choosing which one you want. And that is all there is to it. So before I finish this video, I just want to touch down on one last thing that I didn't get a lot of time to talk about. And that's a pixel persona up here. And what we do in here, this is where we can start adding textures and highlights and shadows to our drawing. So if we just come back and we select the body here, and we open that up, if we just come in here on one of these curves and come down to the right hand corner here, and we've got this option that says add pixel layer. If you add that pixel layer inside of here, we can now draw over this. So once selected that pixel layer, come back over to your pixel persona, come down and grab a paintbrush, and we got all these different brushes inside of here, which will give us different textures and effects. And we can just simply select one of these. And you can increase your brush size or decrease it using the left or right bracket keys. And you can generally just start drawing in some details. Kind of like that. This isn't a good example, but it's just telling you what you can do with this. It's just a case of you playing around with these and seeing what you can do with it. We could drop the opacity on that so it's a bit more subtle and just maybe in the background a little bit, kind of like that. And of course, if it's something you don't like, you can come and erase that with a eraser tool and just go over the bits that you don't want to get rid of it. And you've got some other options in here, such as the fill tool and the dodge and burn. Anything you've kind of seen before in Photoshop or maybe Affinity Photo. I'm not going to color this guy properly in this tutorial as the video has gone on far too long and I'm sure you guys are eager to finish it now. However, if you do want me to do another follow-up video where we can color this guy in and give him some highlights and shadows and textures, then let me know in the comments and I will do that one for you. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the video and you've learned exactly what it is you set out to learn. And most importantly, you managed to stay with me to the end. I really appreciate it if you did. And once again, if you did, just let me know in the comments and hit that thumbs up, as it really does help me with the YouTube algorithm and helps other people find my content. And of course, if you haven't already subscribed, then please subscribe to check out any of my future releases, as well as all the current content I have, including other videos on Affinity Designer. But for now, have a great day and I will see you in the next video.